All right. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hope everyone's doing well.
Likewise.
So last time we met, we were in Ruth, chapters 1 and 2. We met Naomi and heard of her tragic story. Her family fled Moab to avoid a family in Judah, famine in Judah. Her husband and 2 sons all died there in Moab. Uh, Her 2 daughters-in-law intended to come back with Ruth to Judah. She convinced one to return to her family, but Ruth stuck with her. Naomi felt that the Lord was her enemy and had suffered bitterly at his hand, and so was in a very bad spot at the end of the first chapter. Then Ruth goes to work in the fields in order to earn some food for them to eat. And she comes to work in the field of a man named Boaz, a relative of theirs, uh, who took notice of her and gives her preferential treatment. Ruth's love for Naomi and good reputation is a source of many blessings in that second chapter. And now we get to chapter 3, and we see what comes of all this. Can we have someone read verses 1 through 5?
Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that may be well with you? Is it not Boaz, our relative, with those young women you were? See, he was winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash therefore and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor. Do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies, and go and uncover his feet and lie down. And he will tell you what to do." And she replied, "All that you say, I will do."
So Ruth has spent a long time through these days of harvest providing for Naomi. And now at the beginning of this, it says our mother-in-law wants to find rest for her. So Naomi is thinking about a way to provide for her hardworking daughter-in-law now. This bond of love that they share is one that is impresses everybody in the town of Bethlehem, where all this takes place. And we see that they still are very much looking out for each other. As a close relative, kin, or in some translation, will say a friend, Boaz has shown himself to be kindly disposed towards both Naomi and Ruth. She's pointing out to Ruth that close relationship of kindness that they have. And he tells her to go down to the threshing floor. Now, what a threshing floor is, it's a large, flat space that they can make very, very flat. It's usually around 30 feet in diameter, so a pretty large space. And once the harvest is concluded, all the grain would be brought there for winnowing and threshing. And what that is, threshing is a way that the grain was pounded in order to kind of loosen up like the soft shell and the grain that's inside, separating essentially the useful bits from the waste bits. And once let's see, and then winnowing is the process of tossing all that together, in which case the light waste product would be blown away and it would all settle in one pile, and then the grain that is heavier would all land basically right at your feet, and it would be in a separate pile. So you're separating out what you intend to keep and what is waste. So that's what's going to be happening there today. Everyone's has been harvesting and harvesting for days upon days, and now everyone's going to go to the threshing floor, make all the grain useful and get rid of all the waste. Threshing is a very important and often used image in prophecy. It is used all throughout, the prophets, and also it's in images and a very many number of stories and narratives. So, as an example, we have from the Psalms, the wicked are not so, but they are like chaff that the wind drives away. That's in Psalm 1, verse 4. We have in Isaiah, "Behold, I make you a threshing sledge, new, sharp, and having teeth. You shall thresh the mountains and crush them, and you shall make the hills like chaff. You shall winnow them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the tempest shall scatter them, and you shall rejoice in the Lord, in the Holy One of Israel you shall glory. That's in Isaiah 41, verse 15 and 16. And in Matthew, we have this is John the Baptist talking about Jesus. His winnowing fork is in his hand, and he will clear the threshing floor and gather his wheat into the barn, but the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire. That's in Matthew chapter 3, verse 12. The great Lutheran theologian Johann Gerhard said about this, wash therefore and anoint yourself with fragrant balm according to the custom of the land, and put on your best cloak and go down to the threshing floor of Boaz, but do not make yourself known. The Hebrew says, hide yourself so that no one sees you. And accordingly, go there when it becomes dark, and not before, to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. So she's supposed to look presentable, basically get herself looking as best as she can. No longer is she working in a field. She's supposed to be close enough to Boaz to observe him, but not really take part in the party so much. She's not supposed to be recognizable to him. The point at which says mark where he lays down is very important, because obviously there's not electric lights. This is outdoors under the stars. It can be very dark. She's going to need to be able to find where he is once the party has stopped. And so she needs to remember where it is that he decided to go to sleep. So next, it says that she will uncover his feet. Now, feet in Scripture is sometimes used as a euphemism for the genitals. For example, we have in Genesis 49:10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. This is essentially saying that the holy seed will continue in the line of Judah until the king arrives, whom the people owe their obedience. So here, between the feet is talking about his loins. We also have in Isaiah, in the day the Lord will shave with a razor that is hired beyond the river, with the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of his feet, and it will sweep away also his beard. That's Isaiah 7:20. They're talking about the king of Assyria. Now, it's not saying that the king of Assyria has hobbit feet. So they're talking about the hair around the loins once again. And again in Isaiah, above him stood the seraphim, each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. Now the wings there, it suggested that it's not his feet that he's covering, but essentially his groin, and so that's what's being covered, is his face, his identity, and then his his modesty, essentially.
Question: you're talking about feet, but they really mean something else. Why don't they just talk about what? I mean, does it translate feet?
It does translate as feet, like it is the word for feet, but the usage of it. So, like between his feet, in the first example, the space between your feet.
Right.
Well, you're talking about something else.
Something else. Okay.
And once again, so it's a lot of in the usage that we get the euphemism.
Right.
And what is the purpose of euphemism is to kind of obscure and not really talk directly about something,
Right.
or to use it, or to talk something about it more poetically.
Kind of modesty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, and the Bible has no trouble being rather brutal and upfront at times, but it is not always that way.
Okay.
A lot of it has to do with the particular author as well.
Okay.
But in this case, so as a result of this being a euphemism that Scripture uses occasionally, Some scholars believe that what is happening here is that Ruth is uncovering Boaz's private parts in order to go so far as to and suggest a sexual encounter takes place right here. They believe that Boaz acquires Ruth as a wife right there on the threshing floor. So about this, the theologian Walter Brewer says, ordinarily marriages were contracted by the male heads of the house. In this case, a woman without a husband had to find a way for her widowed ward to propose a marriage, which the law made obligatory for a kinsman or kinsman. Boaz did not interpret Ruth's actions as a wily attempt to lure him into intercourse with her, thereby putting him under obligation to her. Whether Naomi was prepared to have Ruth take such a course, if necessary, cannot be determined. Essentially, what most scholars and basically all the way that the church fathers looked at this, they took feet to be very literal here. That this is not an attempt to make Boaz somehow owe her something, but this is a way of making her kind of submissive towards him. And there's a very obvious, once you think about it, reason why she would do that, uncover his feet, even without any sort of symbolism. If you uncover his feet, they get cold and he wakes up.
Yeah.
And now you can have your conversation.
That's funny. He's waiting to lie down and she's like,
Yep.
you know. That's funny.
Yeah. So we have an example from the church fathers, Theodoret of Cyrus. Therefore, Naomi suggests to her that she sleep at Boaz's feet, not that she might sell her body, for the words of the narrative signify the opposite. Rather, she trusts the man's temperance and judgment. Moreover, the actions corroborate with the words. So Ruth then obeys her mother-in-law and sets out to do everything that she has said. So now let's read verse 6 to 13. Somebody, please.
So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of a heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." And he said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, and that you have not gone after young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask, for all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And now it is true that I am a redeemer. Yet there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then, as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning."
So the implication, is they're drinking and being merry. This is a harvest festival. The hard work is over, and now it's time to celebrate how God has bountifully provided for him and his people. He's obviously had some wine to drink, but it's pretty clear that it's a very temperate amount. He's not getting passed out drunk. This is, as we were in Hosea, we mentioned the frequent use of wine as a blessing. For example, in the Psalms, you cause the grass to grow and the livestock for the livestock, plants for man to cultivate, that he may bring forth food from the earth, and wine to gladden the heart of man, oils to make his face shine, and bread to strengthen a man's heart. That's Psalm 104, verse 14 and 15. So this sort of celebration and merrymaking and even drinking is a perfectly godly behavior. There's no hint of excess that we have right here. And she addresses him as his servant. This is partly how she has been treated by him. She has been treated like one of his own workers, being able to take advantage of all the same benefits as his own people. But it's also uh, a request of him now. Um, she has this request. It might your translation might have spread your wings over your servant, or maybe spread the corner of your garment over me. This word wings or garment is kanaf, meaning something like wing or extremity, like an outer garment or the edge of a garment. It's used in a couple of different senses here. So but typically the edge or outer garment or edge of a garment or a wing, as in like the wing of a bird, is how it's most often used. And it's probably meant both ways in this case here. Morning, Bill. How's it going? Uh, so if you remember back into the previous chapter, Ruth chapter 2, Boaz says to her, "The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wing," that's that word kappa again, um, "did you have come to take refuge." So she is taking refuge under Boaz's care, but it might also be a literal request to the spreading of the garment over her as a sign of that refuge and a sign of that humble positioning that she is taking under him. And he says she calls him a redeemer. She is asking Boaz if he would accept the honor of being her kinsman, redeem her. By marrying her, he would be raising up seed for her dead husband, redeeming the ancestral land of their father Elimelech as well. Let's see. Oh. So you'd think perhaps a young woman like Ruth would seek another husband among younger men, people of her own generation. The temptation for most people when they're young is to go after eye candy. But Ruth does not do this. She honors her mother's wishes and follows her instructions, offering marriage to Boaz instead, who is, as we talked about last time, likely a whole generation older than her, being probably most likely a cousin of Elimelech. Um, Boaz, his life and reputation has been marked by his piety and his faith in the God of Israel. So this is, not the normal young person seeking after, just someone who looks good. This is somebody who has a good reputation. And Boaz recognized this about Ruth, that she is looking at him for his piety and not for his physical attractiveness. Instead of and he takes it as, instead of Ruth asking him to do a favor for her, he takes it as her offering herself to him, and in fact doing him a favor, as he is at this point likely a bachelor, whether he was married previously and widowed or what happened. We don't know precisely, but he is without family at this point, and she's now offering that to him, which he seems to take as a blessing from her. And he, excuse me, and he calls her by the tender term, my daughter, and tells her not to fear, perhaps indicating that she made this request with a little bit of trembling, unsure of herself. She is, after all, a foreigner asking what seems like a great deal for a man that she basically just met a couple weeks ago. But he says that he will do all that she asks. And he calls her a worthy woman. Boaz is recognizing that she's not there lusting after him, but in obedience to the fourth commandment, in obedience to her mother-in-law. And he says that there is a redeemer nearer than I. A redeemer is, as we said, a family member who has the legal right and obligation to purchase back family property that has been sold off, or even people that have been sold into slavery and the things like that. This redeemer nearer is perhaps an older cousin of Elimelech, someone who is has preferential ordering in the family, or a little bit closer related to Elimelech. So Boaz swears that at first light he will do everything that he can for her. Do we have any questions or comments on this section? All right. Now let's read verse 14 to 18.
Because she lay at his feet until morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, bring the garment you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it out. He measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her. And she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did you fare, my daughter? Then she told her all the man, saying, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me. For he said to me, not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. She replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today.
So if there's another reason to doubt the idea that there was a sexual encounter that night, it says that she laid down at his feet once again. That's the position of a servant, someone or a worker or something like that. A wife's place would be next to him. So if he took her as his wife at that time, she would lay down next to him, but she still remains in that position of essentially a supplicant. But they also want to avoid the rumors that would obviously come with men and women sleeping in the same general area. So Ruth leaves the threshing floor before first light. We mentioned at the end of chapter 1 that Naomi lamented that she went out of Judah full and came back empty without her husband or her sons. Well, this seems to be a reversing of that for Ruth. There, she went out empty and begging for mercy, and she now comes back to Naomi full of grain and full of hope for what is about to transpire. These 6 measures of barley are another example after we've had repeated examples in chapter 2 of the generosity of Boaz. So he, as a man richly blessed by God, was in a position to give alms to those who were not as well off. And so even though he's about to go do something for them that will hopefully change their situation, he still at this moment is going to give something for a pair of widows and provide for them. Naomi likely didn't sleep that night, and she is up and waiting for Ruth to return and wants to know right away how things went. Their plan, after all, is a bit of a gamble, banking on the integrity and kindness of Boaz. Ruth tells Naomi all that he had done for her, which is a strange way of putting it because so far he hasn't really done anything except for provide more grain again. He did not presume to know what the closer relative would do, so he could only give her a pledge that he would act in the morning. He did promise her that if the closer relative would not take her, he would, and so be redeemed that day. She probably also recounted to Naomi the praise that Boaz offered for her, celebrating her not for going after young, attractive men, but this older, pious man. And since Naomi's statements about returning emptily were made very publicly in this village, this gift of barley is likely a message to her from Boaz saying, "Not anymore." That he is going to see that she is fulfilled, that she does not need to think of herself as Mara anymore, think of herself identifying as bitter. She can once again feel like Naomi, the beloved, or the desired. So through this generosity and all the other blessings that Boaz has given to Naomi and Ruth, it makes clear that the Lord was never against her. Uh, the Lord was with them even through the difficult times in order to bless them both. And though they would not know it, this blessing includes the path of the promised seed who would bring blessings to every family on earth. So this chapter begins with Naomi seeking rest for Ruth, and it ends with Boaz not resting until the matter is settled, until once again Ruth can find rest in the home of a husband. So, any questions about this section? Comments?
It's amazing how God works with people. It's their basic needs are met, and she's given the comfort of knowing that she'll be cared for,
Yep.
and she's honored by him. And it's, you look at their circumstances, you think, they'd be trash to a lot of people, but they come and Boaz is a good Jew.
Oh yeah.
He's an amazing guy,
Yeah, in chapter 2, you really see his generosity and spirit, where he doesn't just allow the letter of the law to play out, but he goes above and beyond in showing mercy and generosity to Naomi and Ruth.
Right.
So it's very much like Jesus in the sense that he always he gives out blessings more than you can really take in a lot of cases. It's he doesn't just follow the law, he goes way over it in order to ensure that a person is cared for.
Right.
Any other thoughts or comments? All right, let's go on to chapter 4 then, and have someone read verses 1 to 6.
Now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the Redeemer, of whom Boaz had spoken, came by. So Boaz said, "Turn aside, friend, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one besides you to redeem it. And I come after you." And he said, "I will redeem it." Then Boaz said, "The day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." Then the Redeemer said, "I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it."
So the city gates were often where legal affairs took place. It is also where you would expect to see city elders and other respected men in the city to be gathered. If you'll remember in Genesis, the story of Lot, Lot is at the city gate of Sodom when the two angels come into the city. So if you are seated at the city gate, it is a position of respect and of preeminence in the city. For Boaz to tell his Redeemer to turn aside and sit down, they would understand it as being invited to participate in some sort of legal matter, either as an interested party or as a witness. the use of the word friend here, it suggested that the Redeemer remains unnamed and simply referred to as friend, so that he and his family would not be subject to the shame of rejecting the chance to redeem Naomi and Ruth. And these 10 elders that are then sat down, this constitutes something of a quorum. Like, this is something where there's no mistake that what is being witnessed here today is something legally binding and that everyone in the community will know about. They would serve as kind of witness, jury, and judge of the proceedings that are about to take place. We have from Proverbs, where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. Proverbs 11:14. So Boaz knows that if you have a lot of elders, if you have them all attending to the same matter, that any pitfalls or any misdoings are going to be avoided because of the many eyes on the situation. So in verse 3, it talks about redeeming the land that belongs to, it says, the relative Elimelech in the ESV. This is kind of misses something that is picked up in some other translations, like the King James Version. It says, Boaz calls him our brother Elimelech. That word brother is an intentionally close term used here. And it means more than just someone's sibling, but it can refer to many different close relatives. It's the word that Abraham uses when referring to Lot, for example, in Genesis 13, even though that Lot is his nephew, not so it's even a generation after him. The law says about this, if your brother becomes poor and sells part of his property, then his nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what his brother has sold. That's Leviticus 25, verse 25. So by using the word brother here to refer to Elimelech, Boaz is making clear that, this is his duty to redeem him, even though he's not your literal sibling. Says this is someone in your family who's close to you, and you're the closest one to him. It is your obligation to see that this property is returned to the family. The Lutheran Study Bible says, before leaving to Moab some 11 years previously, Elimelech had apparently sold the rights to the harvest of his land. Naomi is now asking the Redeemer to purchase back for her the harvest from that same land. Boaz is making clear to this Redeemer, whether he's an older cousin or what, that the decision is his. But there's also a little bit of accusation in the way he brings this proposal up. The implication being is that, look, you ought to have done something about this already. You're the closest one. It is your duty to see after the family in this way. I come after you means if you're not going to take care of this, then I will. And we see again that, the word brother is considered much more widely than siblings here. It makes clear that Boaz takes the law that says a brother must raise up an heir for his deceased to mean that if there's no literal brothers left, then the duty falls to the next of kin. The rest of the family has that duty to fulfill that law, even if people believe. So I'm trying to remember the names of them, Mahlon and Chilion. So if Chilion, this younger son of Elimelech is, there's no other brothers, well, then it falls to cousins or whoever is next of kin to take care of this law. This law being found in Deuteronomy 25. If brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son from whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. That's Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 and 6. So Boaz is pressing this obligation to his kinsman, not only of restoring the land of Elimelech, as would be, he would do under Leviticus 25, but also to the widow of his son to keep the family name alive, as we saw in Deuteronomy 25. And this specifically to raise up an heir for the deceased brother. And this seems like a step too far for the man. The redeemed land would go to the firstborn son of Ruth, and the Redeemer. But for the Redeemer, every subsequent child by Ruth would then be his own. The man and his family would have to work the redeemed land for Ruth and Naomi to benefit from it, while his own land would then be divided between apparently family that he already has in existence, and now any family that would come from a union with Ruth as well. And he does not seem to want to divide up his own inheritance any further than his own, whatever family he already has. He's willing to work the harvest for the benefit of Naomi and Ruth, but he's not willing to, split up his land any further than it already is between his family. Perhaps even the implication being not for this Moabite woman. So he cedes his rights to Boaz and gives him the legal rights. Any questions, comments on this section?
It's interesting how this is a legal transaction. You can kind of see that he's kind of selfish in not wanting to divide up his inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of reminds me of the Pharisees and, the things that they did as far as, the letter of the law,
Mm-hmm.
but he's kind of not really redeeming her, the Moabite, it's
Right.
It's kind of a sad recognition of kind of like prejudice against people.
A bit, but there's also, this is perhaps someone older, like he may be 50s, maybe even 60 years old. Like he has his own children who work the land. He has his own land that needs to be worked.
Right.
And now he's being asked, well, will you and your family work this other parcel of land and make sure that it's productive on behalf of Naomi and Ruth?
Okay.
And even though he, this is another landowner and he has a lot that needs taken care of, he says, sure, I will work this land so that my family will have some profit from it.
Right.
And then to add Ruth into the mix, a whole nother genesis of a family. And then it's like, okay, well, not only are you working for them, but you're also providing inheritance for anyone that is produced in this union. That seems to be a bit, I've worked my whole life for what I can divide up between my sons.
Right.
And this seems kind of, someone coming in at the end and now breaking everything up.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So you're right, it's not noble, and maybe there is a little bit of prejudice there as well, but it's also, I think, to a lot of people, perhaps understandable, like not wanting to take on that responsibility.
That's true. Yeah.
It's safe to assume that this friend is already married also. Not that I get it, they're allowed to have more than one wife, but I'm assuming that he's already married and has children of his own.
That seems to be the assumption by the passage, that he already has family and he already has a way that he's wanting to divide his property up between his own sons. Any other thoughts or comments? All right, we'll go on reading verse 7 to 12 now. Now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other. And this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself," he drew off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Also Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of this native place. You are witnesses this day." Then all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, "We are witness. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, whom together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman." So this interesting note in verse 7 lets us know that the author of Ruth wrote these many years after the facts of the book. He has to explain to his hearers a custom that had ceased to be observed at that point. Since the genealogy at the end of the book goes all the way to King David, it is thought by most people that it was written somewhere around that time of David, so somewhere around 1000 BC. We also see similar notes like this elsewhere in Scripture. As an example, we have in 1 Samuel, formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he said, "Come, let us go to the seer. For today's prophet was formerly called a seer." That's in 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 9. And you'll see occasionally in Scripture something about which was the custom at the time, and other notes like that to tell people that this is being written after the fact, and that this was something that is no longer observed by the people. So with the near relative publicly releasing his claim to allow Boaz to claim both the land and Ruth, Boaz truly then does become the Redeemer. Interestingly, nowhere in the New Testament is Jesus called a Redeemer. However, it does use a whole lot of Redeemer language about Jesus. He buys us back, so we belong to him. He accomplishes redemption for it. Well, this is kind of splitting hairs here. He has accomplished redemption for us, but it doesn't call him a Redeemer. But you have, as an example, 1 Corinthians 6:20, "For you were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body." And in Colossians, "He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins." That's Colossians 1, verse 13 and 14. So Jesus has bought us. He owns us as our brother who has paid off all of our debts and takes us to himself as a bride. So you see the parallels here are very, very striking. Boaz being a type for Jesus Christ. So Boaz, now receiving this right, declares publicly that he will not only fulfill the law of Leviticus 25, but also the law of Deuteronomy 25. That he will be the brother of Mahlon and marry his widow and perpetuate his house. Boaz does not keep to a confined view of the law, but an expansive view. And this way, again, we mentioned Jesus' generosity. Jesus also goes above and beyond in regards to the law. And so he, instead of the narrow definition of, oh, well, if he doesn't have a sibling, then it's not my duty. No, he says, no, this is still my brother. This is still my kinsman. I will take care of it. Not at all like the Pharisees of the days of Jesus. Boaz publicly stating that he is fulfilling every bit of the law. He's taking a wife out of piety and to give his dead cousin an heir. Then after that point, all of the children by Ruth will be his own children. when the other redeemer was turned away from the idea of raising an heir for another, Boaz is pleased to obey God's instructions to be able to do this for his brother. So not only are the 10 elders witness, but the general populace who see this all declare themselves witnesses to the agreement. This whole thing is very public, just like how the events of the Gospels were all done very publicly. They were not done in a corner as it recounts in Acts 26:26. It's like these were things that everybody saw. These aren't hidden things that only a handful of people know about. And so in a book full of blessings, now the people of Bethlehem pronounce some blessings on Boaz and Ruth. They talk about this as this woman who is coming into your house. Apparently, just being married to Mahlon did not make Ruth to be considered part of the house of Israel. This phrase, then, coming into the house of Boaz, it makes clear that Ruth is now becoming a part of the house of Judah, the house of Israel, and she is now very officially and publicly being welcomed into Israel as a sort of adoption. They say, may she be like Rachel and Leah. These were the wives of Jacob and mothers of the 12 tribes of Israel. Rachel's tomb also is very close to Bethlehem. So Rachel's tomb is kind of linked to Bethlehem in a lot of the way Scripture talks. And this blessing that they be like Rachel and Leah is a blessing that she may be fruitful, since between the two of them and the concubines they had 12 sons. That's a very large family even in those times. So this is the blessing that they pronounce on Ruth, and so far it's all sounding pretty nice. And then you get to this last bit. May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. And if anyone's familiar about the story of Tamar, you might be thinking someone who is saying this as a part of a blessing deserves to be slapped, as this is not a particularly happy time in the tribe of Judah. This story can be found in Genesis 38. The long and short of it is Tamar married a son of Judah. He died, married another son. He died, and Judah refused to give her any more sons in order to fulfill the law. And so she had to resort to essentially pretending to be a prostitute to get Judah himself to take care of the law. So it was by trickery that she had the law fulfilled for her. And the result is the son Perez. And so it's noted then that Perez, who is an ancestor of Boaz and Naomi here, this genealogy of Jesus includes people like Perez, Rahab, and Ruth in this genealogy. So it's a very eclectic, strange group of people in this lineage of the Messiah. But this blessing is probably a bit of self-reflection by the people of Bethlehem, basically saying God sometimes uses sinners and unexpected people to be a part of his plan. So, and then also the fact that, well, Tamar went about this the dishonorable way, and you are now doing this the honorable way of providing for that son of your family member. Any questions or comments on this section?
I'm a little confused here. Elimelech was Naomi's
Husband. Yes.
Okay. And so Mahlon was Ruth's husband.
Yes.
So then if Boaz and Ruth, the firstborn, his name would be Mahlon.
His name he would be counted as an heir of Mahlon. Yes. So the family name of Elimelech passed down to his son Mahlon would continue with Ruth's son, and so that's how the genealogy would continue. But then the rest of Ruth's children would be Boaz's. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, let's finish this out. Verse 13 to 22.
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you as a restorer of life and as a nourisher of your old age. Your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, A son has been born to Naomi. They named him Obed, and he is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Am I reading through the whole?
Yes, the whole thing.
Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David.
This section begins with the word so. And this word in the Hebrew grammar is called a sequential imperfect, and which suggests that it's only after this public declaration that then what the rest of this phrase is talking about takes place. So when it says, so Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife, that's follows after the public declaration and the acquiring of the legal rights. So if ever if anything else is needed to dissuade the idea that some sort of dubious sexual encounter took place on the threshing floor, we see that in the grammar of it here, Boaz only takes her as a wife at this point in the narrative. And it uses the phrase "he went into her," which is different than the usual euphemism that is used, as where particularly in Genesis, where it says, "And Adam knew his wife." This sort of knowing as is used a whole lot in Scripture, but this is actually a very interesting mirror of, once again, the story of Tamar. We have in Genesis 38, Judah turned aside at the roadside and said, Come, let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, What will you give me that you may come into me? This is Genesis 38:16. So we have here, once again, a reflection of that incident with Judah, where unlike Judah's dishonorable union, we have a perfectly honorable and godly union between Boaz and Ruth. And the child becomes the happiness of the village, and of particularly Naomi. He becomes the heir, the next redeemer, and the caretaker for Naomi to care for her in her later life. And he is recalled a restorer of life. The women at the time were obviously thinking about how the child would give Naomi happiness and meaning. But think about his descendant, Jesus. And could there possibly be a better title of his than the restorer of life? Not only did he raise up people from the dead and during his ministry, not only did he raise himself up from the dead in his own resurrection, but he is the resurrection and he brings it to all of us. As we see in John chapter 11, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. That's John 11:25 and 26. And then in the previous chapter, from again, then the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I come that they may have life and have it abundantly. That's John 10:10. So this restorer of life is then sat on Naomi's lap, and she becomes his nurse. This does not mean that Naomi is his wet nurse. that is long gone from from her ability. But it's something more like she becomes his nanny, as he is her particular care and charge, as opposed to the rest of Ruth's children who will be cared for by the family of Boaz. And it's interesting too that the women of Bethlehem named the child instead of Ruth or even Naomi. Perhaps it's a situation like when we were in Luke, and the relatives of Elizabeth and Zechariah try to name the child, and they say no, his name is going to be John. Perhaps we have a situation something like that. But the name that they give him, Obed, it means servant. And once again, it reminds us that his ultimate descendant, Jesus, the suffering servant of the Lord, the child born of Ruth and Boaz, would be David's grandfather. David, and with David, we see once again a narrowing of the path of the promised seed. That was something we talked about at the beginning of this chapter, that this is a book where the broad promise of Messiah, of the seed of the woman, is narrowed not just from Israel, not just from the tribe of Judah, but we have with the coming of David a narrowing down to the line of David. And to end things off, it gives us a genealogy reaching all the way back to Genesis 38 with the story of Tamar and Perez, and bringing it all the way forward in time to 1st and 2nd Samuel with King David. And you can find this same genealogy in Matthew chapter 1 as well, in the genealogy of Jesus. Any other questions or comments?
The thing that's interesting here for me is that a Moabitess, and she's the Gentile coming in, becoming an Israelite. And so, Jesus' ancestry is for everybody.
Yeah.
It's, it's not just these Jewish people. It's like there are different people that are involved in this.
Yep.
And it really, going forward, it just makes it a comfort to us that this is for everybody,
I always see the book of Ruth as it depicted as like one of those great love stories. It's very romantic and whatnot. It's these two people very much in love with each other, and you see the love between Ruth and Naomi too in the first chapters as well. But the really interesting thing I found in this study, doing it, because I love the book of Ruth. I've looked through this a couple times, is realizing just how much it's also a love story about the law of God. Boaz is very much eager to follow God's law, and he loves the way that it takes care of people, and he's eager to be compassionate and follow that law. So I always find it very interesting that the law, above the sort of romantic stuff going on here, is a love for piety and godliness. Any other thoughts or comments? All right. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, your law is holy and good, though it shows us to be sinners. We thank you for your Son, Jesus, who fulfilled the law and redeemed us, making us your bride and bringing us to yourself as heirs to your heavenly kingdom. Help us to love your law as much as Boaz, knowing it is for our benefit and the benefit of those around us. Help us also to have a generous spirit to look after the well-being of those around us, seeking for others what is best for them. Amen.
Amen.